Hello, friend. Thanks for stopping by. If you're new here, I'd be grateful if you subscribed and shared this video. I always read your comments, so let me know where you're watching from. Let's get started. My name is Miles Conrad. For a long time, I thought I had things figured out. I'd built my own company from the ground up, married the woman I imagined sharing every chapter of my life with, and felt certain I was on the right path. But looking back now, I see how blind I was to the warnings, the ones that mattered most. I was 29 when Ava entered my life. She worked in event marketing, always on the move, sharp as a tack. I ran a small but steady freight logistics business, not flashy, but reliable. We met at a networking mixer I almost decided to skip. She approached me with ease, confident and quick on her feet, like she already knew I'd say yes to dinner. I did. Everything felt effortless from the start. Within a few months, we were practically inseparable. Ava had this undeniable pull, like the world tilted in our favor when she was near. She was genuinely curious about my goals, helped me fine-tune pitch decks late into the night, and even sat through investor meetings just to lend support. We were a team, or at least that's how it felt. The first time I brought her to meet my mother, Estelle, I sensed a shift. Mom was gracious, polite, even welcoming. She asked the usual questions: where Ava was from, what she did, how her family was. But once Ava left, something changed. Mom made tea and sat silently at the kitchen table for a while. Then she said, "She's got charm, that one." I smiled. "And she's smart." "She is," Mom said. Then she paused. "Just make sure you're seeing more than the charm." I asked what she meant. She stirred her tea and said, "Some people are more attracted to the spotlight than to the work behind it. And you, Miles, you've always been the one who does the work." I brushed it off, chalked it up to the kind of cautious advice any mother might give. After all, she raised me on her own after my dad passed when I was 10. She cared deeply, but rarely interfered. Still, her words lingered longer than I cared to admit. 2 years later, Ava and I got married. It was simple, understated. No grand spectacle, at least not yet. 3 years in, the cracks began to show. One of our drivers got into an accident at a warehouse, delaying a crucial delivery. That client, our second biggest, walked away. At the same time, fuel costs soared and several contracts expired. Everything started to fall apart at once. I was working 12 to 14-hour days just to hold the company together. Ava's tolerance for it all began to erode quickly. Initially, she asked things like, "What's the contingency plan?" That soon shifted to, "Why not just get a regular job?" I couldn't blame her for being upset. I was too. But instead of sticking it out beside me, it felt like she saw the mess as something I had dragged her into. Dinners became quiet affairs or skipped altogether. One night, I came home after 10, absolutely spent. She was on the couch, scrolling her phone. "I brought takeout," I said, setting the bags down. She didn't look up. "Late again." "Call ran long," I replied. "They're considering coming back." "Or they're not," she said without emotion. "Did it ever occur to you this might just not be working anymore?" I sat down and began unpacking the food. "It's just a rough patch. That doesn't mean it's over." She looked at me like I was chasing ghosts. "It's been 6 months of you spinning plates. 6 months of me doing everything else." She took her plate and walked off to the bedroom. That became our normal. She stopped asking about the company. I stopped trying to explain. We lived like roommates who shared nothing but a roof. I kept telling myself it would pass, that once the business bounced back, so would we. But deep down, I could feel her drifting away. The business was hanging on by a thread when I got a call from St. Luke's Hospital. My mother had collapsed, stroke. When I arrived, she was awake, but her speech was thick and slow. The doctors called it minor, but warned she'd need around-the-clock support until they could run more tests. Ava came once. She stood a few feet away, arms folded, eyes on her phone more than on my mom. "She looks better than I thought," she whispered as we left. She's still in danger, Ava. I know. Hospitals make me uncomfortable. That was her only visit that week. I didn't argue. My attention was elsewhere. I rearranged meetings, slept in a pull-out chair beside Mom's bed, read to her from the book she loved, and stayed through her physical therapy. She was slowly improving, but something in her gaze told me she was holding something back. One day, I brought her soup from a cafe she loved. She took my hand and didn't let go. "I'm tired, Miles," she said. "You're strong. You'll come through like always. This feels different." I didn't try to change her mind. 3 weeks later, she passed away quietly in her sleep. The nurse said it was peaceful. Her funeral was small, just a few longtime neighbors, some of her old friends, and me. Ava came, stayed for a moment, and left before the service was even over. When everyone else had gone, I remained, alone with her headstone. No speeches, no gestures, just silence, thick and unrelenting. That evening, Georgia Harlow, my mother's estate lawyer, called unexpectedly. She requested that I visit her office the next day, hinting that my mother had left behind something meant solely for me. I assumed it was legal paperwork, maybe her will. What I didn't foresee was the envelope she handed me. It was heavy, sealed, and bore my mother's handwriting, instantly recognizable. Inside were only two things, a brief letter and a legal document that would soon change everything. The letter was succinct, just a single sheet. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I know how you are, Miles. You try to take on too much alone. But you won't have to anymore. I've arranged matters to give you room to breathe, while ensuring no one unworthy can exploit you. Soon, you'll understand. Mom." After I finished reading, Georgia slid the second document across her immaculate desk. "Your mother didn't leave behind a standard will," she explained. "She established a trust, one with strong safeguards." "A trust?" My mind jumped to those funds set up for young children. "Not quite," Georgia clarified gently. "Picture it like a fortress. Everything is held inside and you're the only beneficiary. But there are conditions." "What kind of conditions?" I asked, still trying to process this. "For the first 2 years you won't have full access," she said evenly. "You'll be able to make withdrawals, but only for approved business or medical needs. Nothing for personal expenses." That caught me off guard. "Why the waiting period?" I asked. She hesitated a moment before answering. "The trust contains a clause. If you or your spouse file for divorce during that 2-year span, your spouse will be permanently excluded from receiving anything. No exceptions." I sat quietly as her words sank in. Then she added, "This arrangement is airtight. Your mother worked closely with specialists to ensure no one undeserving could benefit, as she put it." In that instant, her intentions became clear. My mother hadn't just left me her wealth. She had crafted a shield I didn't realize I needed. As I left Georgia's office, letter and trust documents in hand, my thoughts were racing. When I arrived home, I kept the details to myself. All I told Ava was, "Mom left me everything. It's just tied up in legal processes right now." Ava didn't even glance up from her laptop. "That sounds like her. Always meticulous," she remarked, barely reacting. That was it. No curiosity, no warmth, just a fleeting look in her eyes. Something calculating, maybe even opportunistic, or both. 2 weeks later, without warning, a man appeared at my office with an envelope in hand. "Are you Miles Conrad?" he asked politely. "I am," I replied. "You've been served," he said, handing me the envelope. I tore it open immediately, still holding my morning coffee. Divorce papers, filed by Ava Conrad, citing irreconcilable differences. I sat there stunned. No prior conversations, no hint this was coming. Just this. That evening, when I returned home, Ava was in the kitchen, casually pouring herself a glass of wine as though it were any ordinary Thursday. "You filed," I said simply. She didn't even blink. "I did." "Without a word beforehand?" I asked. She leaned casually on the counter, sipping her wine. "Miles, we both know this has been over for some time. I just made it official. You couldn't even wait more than 2 weeks after my mother's funeral? I shot back bitterly. She gave a small shrug. Yeah, the timing isn't ideal, I get that. But we've been living like strangers for a while. Let's not pretend otherwise. I watched her closely. There was no anger on her face, just cold indifference, as if her mind had already moved on. You think you're walking away with half? I asked quietly. Her eyebrow arched, feigning innocence. Half of what, exactly? You know what I'm talking about, I said firmly. A faint smirk appeared. Miles, we're married. Anything gained during the marriage is shared property. Even future income counts. There it was. Her mask dropped. She clearly thought she'd won, convinced she was about to cash in. Without another word, she turned and left the room, abandoning her half-empty wine glass on the counter. The next day, my attorney, Raymond Lowell, called after reviewing everything. They're demanding half of the trust's projected value, he told me. A bold move, considering what they didn't yet know. Ava was convinced she was entitled to it all, but she was in for a rude awakening. We arranged a mediation session. I kept my communications restrained and polite. No emotional reactions, no heated exchanges. Just the careful, professional tone I'd refined after years of business dealings. Ava believed she held all the leverage, that she had timed this perfectly. What she didn't realize, and was about to discover, was how much she had underestimated me. The mediation room was stark and cold, the kind of place where countless relationships had come to their official end. A pot of stale coffee sat ignored on a side table. Ava sat directly across from me, dressed impeccably in a navy blazer radiating confidence, the air of someone expecting to walk away with a windfall. Her attorney, Gavin Pierce, spoke first. Given the length of the marriage and the anticipated inheritance, we believe Ava is entitled to 50% of the community property, including future distributions from the trust. He spoke as though this were routine, practically a foregone conclusion. Raymond, ever composed, calmly opened his file, slid a copy of the trust across the table, and said, "Let's start by examining this document carefully." Gavin glanced down briefly. Ava's gaze stayed fixed on me. This trust was established before Mr. Conrad received any distributions, Raymond explained evenly. It qualifies as separate property, was never commingled, and contains a strict clause. The assets are inaccessible for 2 years, and any divorce filed during that time permanently bars a spouse from receiving anything. Retroactively, the trust is entirely protected. Gavin's face began to harden as he flipped through the pages, reading each provision carefully, his confidence evaporating line by line. "Can this clause really hold up?" he asked. Without missing a beat, Raymond tapped the notarization seal and gave a composed nod. Drafted by a professional. Validated. It's already withstood 2 court challenges. Ava's expression shifted immediately. Her mouth opened, then tightened into a thin line. She leaned in close to Gavin and whispered something only he could hear. He murmured back. A second later, she grabbed the stack of papers from the table and started rifling through them, flipping page after page with growing urgency. Then, stillness. Eventually, Gavin leaned back, cleared his throat, and said, "We might need to rethink our entire approach. No apology, no acknowledgement of error, just the quiet disintegration of a plan that had never really held water." Ava didn't say a word. She kept staring down at the paperwork, her eyes glazed over, as if the truth had hit her all at once. She believed she had timed everything just right. She expected me to walk away defeated, resentful, and hand her a portion of something she hadn't lifted a finger to build. But she moved too soon. And my mother, she saw it coming long before I even suspected. Before the meeting concluded, Ava stood up. "This isn't over," she said flatly, eyes locked on the floor. But it was over. She just wasn't ready to accept it yet. Half a year later, the divorce was finalized. No courtroom drama, no drawn-out battles. There was nothing left to fight for. Ava left with what was left of our life together, a small cut of the home's equity, a dwindling joint savings account, and her vehicle. Most of what she walked away with went straight into paying her legal bills. On the day we finalized everything, she showed up, signed the papers, and walked out without saying a single word. No farewell, no parting message. 3 months slipped by. Then, just before midnight one night, I got a text. A long one. Just a wall of words. I know you probably hate me. I know I made mistakes. But I'm struggling. Everything's falling apart. I didn't expect it to end like this. I'm behind on rent, I've lost 2 clients, and I don't have anyone else to turn to. Please help me get back on track. I stared at my phone for a long time. She hadn't called after my mother's funeral, offered no comfort while I buried the woman who raised me. She filed for divorce barely 2 weeks after the estate passed into my name, believing she was entitled to half. And now she was asking for help. I typed a reply, erased it, wrote another. This time it was brief, firm, unemotional. I'm sorry you're going through this, Ava, but I can't help you. Take care of yourself. I hit send. Then I blocked her number. I didn't feel victorious, but I felt finished. Because when someone thinks they're winning, that's when you see who they really are. And when everything collapses, that's just the echo left behind. A few weeks later, I visited my mother's grave. The sky was cloudless, the air completely still, no breeze, no sounds. I brought lilies, her favorite, and stood there quietly, surrounded by calm. She hadn't left me riches. What she gave me was space, room to recover. A cushion, not just for my finances, but for my heart. She had seen through Ava when I was still blind to the truth. That clause, the one I once thought was overkill, ended up being the safety net that caught me when everything shattered. Ava assumed she had timed it perfectly. She saw inheritance and thought the prize was hers for the taking. But timing is a fragile thing. Get it wrong, and you don't just lose, you crash and burn. She filed those papers the moment the estate transferred, convinced it would mean instant reward. What she didn't know was that she was running full speed into a firewall my mother had quietly put in place years ago. I didn't just leave that marriage with assets. I left with a lesson branded into me. Pay close attention to the ones who cheer when you're soaring, but pay even closer attention to who stays when you're falling. Ava was around when life was smooth, but when things turned, she vanished. When there was something to take, she made her move. She played a poor hand, and I let her. That was the last time I ever saw her, and I never looked back.